Today is the first day of April, which of course means that it's April Fool's Day. It's the day when most of us ignore the news and take everything that we read on social media with a grain of salt. Well, more than we normally do. It's also the time when video game magazines would publish their best fake games and unrealistic cheat codes. I mean, who can forget that time when Electronic Gaming Monthly convinced the world that Shang Long was a secret boss in Street Fighter 2? Or when LamePro previewed the new hit game Fridge Racer? You get it? Obviously, you remember that, because I posted a full video looking back at the complete history of EGM's April Fool's gags. And then, 1 year later, I followed that up by spending nearly a half hour going over every single LamePro joke published in the 90s. Yeah, literally all of them. For April Fool's 2021, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to top that. I considered looking at different magazines like, say, Nintendo Power, which at one point confirmed that the sequel to Mario 64 would be Luigi 64. But unfortunately, I just didn't have the time to go through a quarter century of Nintendo Power issues. And if we're being honest here, most of the jokes were pretty terrible. I also considered Next Generation and Die Hard Game Fan, but they were either too serious or too inconsistent. Clearly, I've already covered the best April Fool's has to offer. Yeah, it's all downhill from here. So here's a novel idea. Instead of looking at classic April Fool's gags, let's go the opposite direction. We'll save Nintendo Power and the rest of the magazines for next year, because all the jokes I'm going to talk about in this video are not related to April Fools. That's right, you heard me. You're not going to find even one April Fool's joke here. Well, okay, that's not entirely true. I know I just said that, but there is going to be one April Fool's joke. Specifically, this one. This was the first April Fool's joke published in Electronic Gaming Monthly, showing that one time when the Belmonts fought the Foot Clan in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. As you might imagine, this led to a lot of people writing in to figure out how EGM pulled off this trick. Such as this person who said, okay, you pulled one over on us with your April Fool's trick. I have to admit, it fooled me, but what still puzzles me is how you did it. If it's a bogus trick, then how did you get Simon in the Turtles game? Did you reprogram the cart? Now, looking back on it, we know that EGM did this with computers and photo editing software. They confirmed as much with their response to the letters, though still managed to play coy with the details. The fun side effect of that April Fool's joke is that it led to 4 straight issues of EGM mashing up some of the biggest games from the early 1990s. This started out in their June 1991 issue, when they jokingly injected the Battletoads into Double Dragon. Of course, what certainly started out as a goof would end up becoming a reality. I don't know if the fake EGM picture inspired Rare, but only 2 years later they would go on to make Battletoads / Double Dragon on the NES, Genesis, Super Nintendo, and Game Boy. Unfortunately, we didn't have the same luck when Sonic the Hedgehog invaded one of Strider's most iconic levels in the July 1991 issue. These were 2 of the best games on the Genesis, and I'm not gonna lie, I would definitely be up for playing Strider with Sonic as the hero. I mean, forget about Battletoads and Double Dragon, this is the mashup that needs to be made. 1 month later, it was Mega Man's turn to fight... Wait, is that Damned from Final Fight? Of course, Super NES owners may know him from his safe-for-work name, Thrasher, because I guess the name Damned was too edgy for Nintendo. Then again, they also changed the name Sodom to Katana. So, Capcom wasn't taking a whole lot of chances in the early 1990s. For their final fake game mashup, Electronic Gaming Monthly went a little bit more obscure. In case you don't recognize the 2 games here, the space shoot-'em-up portion is the critically acclaimed Genesis game Gyruss, while the boss is the main bad guy Ramses from Valis 3. We've covered both of these 16-bit classics in our Game Over series, so, maybe check those out if you want this mashup to make sense. After 4 months of proving that they know how to Photoshop games together, EGM suddenly stopped. They went back to their regular coverage and only tricked their readers in their April issues. But this, my friends, is not the end of our story. What Electronic Gaming Monthly did was inspire all kinds of other magazines to create their own fake games, some of which we saw when we explored LamePro's many terrible April Fool's jokes. But you know what? There was one magazine that decided to turn this idea into a major part of their review section. I'm talking about Foul, a short-lived publication from New York City that tried to be as offensive as possible. Their issues were from the early 2000s, and in a lot of ways, they were the precursor to the edgy shitlord types that you see here on YouTube. One of their gimmicks was to review a fake game in every issue, complete with screenshots and even quotes. A good example of that is this Special Olympians game they reviewed in their 7th issue. This is, of course, a play on the Special Olympics, where, as they explain, the goal is to not win or lose, but just to compete. Oh boy, it's an incredibly mean-spirited joke about athletes in wheelchairs, blind javelin throwers, Down syndrome gymnastics, armless bowling, and so on and so forth. You get the point. Oh boy, we have clearly come a long way since the days when you could just toss Sonic and Strider and call it a day. In another issue, the fake game was Satanica, developed by God Games and published by Take 666 Interactive. Yeah, we're already off to a bad start with this one. Thankfully, the rest of the game actually sounds like fun. It's a role-playing game where you control Satan's army in an attempt to take over the world. Look, obviously, this is meant to piss off the right-wing religious types who were still punch-drunk from the whole satanic panic era. And wouldn't you know, here we are 2 decades later, and Lil Nas X is doing the exact same thing to jab the exact same people. It really does go to show that history repeats itself. But enough about Foul, because there is one more person who was inspired by all of the fake games and mashups found in the pages of Electronic Gaming Monthly. That person was me! When I launched the Defunct Games website back in 2001, one of the very first articles I wrote was about a fake fighting game starring all of our favorite Konami characters. I'm talking about that little Metal Gear robot from Snatcher, the guys from Contra, Solid Snake, Alucard, and even Sparkster. This led to me photoshopping mashups of World Heroes vs. Samurai Showdown, Metal Slug with Spin Masters, and a Neo Geo Pocket Color game where Sonic the Hedgehog battled Mario. That last one has a cover that is so clearly fake that it almost goes without saying. But apparently the pictures I doctored were convincing, because I still get people emailing me wondering where they can find that game. Who knew I was that good? Now, the fake games section at Defunct Games eventually evolved from being stupid mashups to fake games satirizing things in the news. A good example of that is Blix, the UN sweeper. Which probably makes a whole lot more sense when you remember that Hans Blix was the chief UN weapon inspector during the whole early stages of the Iraq War. This is also where you got fake games based off both Pippa and Sopa, rejected Beatles games, the Lifetime Movie Network version of Silent Hill, the real Tony Hawk Shred, Nintendo's next DS, and even a game based on MTV's Punk'd that didn't actually come with a game. Not cool, Ashton. Not cool. And while it's easy to write off a lot of these fake games as little more than just jokes, there is one that I'm pretty sure that you're gonna recognize. Here's the box art I made for Jihad on the Nintendo Entertainment System all the way back in 2004. It was part of a satirical piece about the wars, and while the article is woefully out of date, the pixel mushroom cloud I created remains the channel's logo. It really is the one thing from the early days of Defunct Games that has endured. I bring all this up because today marks Defunct Games' 20th anniversary. That's not a joke. I launched the website back on April 1st, 2001. I'm serious. You can go and look it up on the Wayback Machine if you don't believe me. I have so much to say about not only the fake games that we talked about here, but also many of the things that I attempted back in the day. I'm gonna spend part of this year looking back at my 2 decades running Defunct Games. I'm gonna be telling stories that nobody has ever heard before. We're gonna look at the triumphs as well as some of the site's darkest moments. Guys, I have so much dirt to dish. But that can wait for another day, because today is about celebrating all the jokers who taught us that you don't need to wait for April 1st in order to fool everybody. So I salute you, person who decided to mash together Gyrus and Valis or Mega Man in Final Fight. Now, what's it gonna take to get Sega to actually make that Sonic Strider mashup? I really want to know. Hey, thanks for watching me talk about non-April Fool's jokes on April Fool's Day. If you want even more April Fool's fun, then I'm going to link our look at EGM's best and worst April Fool's pranks, as well as all of the LamePro jokes from the 1990s in the comments below and description box. Look, I know I'm a little biased here, but there's really a lot of great information there, so go and check it out. Now, here's the question I have for you. What video game mashup needs to happen? Oh man, you know, I was reminded of how much fun it was to mash up classic games when I was writing this article. Perhaps that's something we need to bring back in the future. What do you say? Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, you should look out for an Easter-themed review, as well as a new episode of Defunct Games News on Sunday. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.